Hey there everybody, and welcome back to another codeless application development video. For those of you that are looking to implement any kind of workflow automation to your mobile or web apps, whether you're using Appgyver or any other platform, and you want to integrate with something like Make.com or Zapier or something along those lines, stay tuned. I'm going to be covering the basics in today's video. Now this video is going to be doing something simple like a PDF maker. A user will be able to create a certificate for themselves. They'll enter in their information and the skill. When they click Create, that's when all the workflow automation is triggered. So using Make.com, this entire video is going to be using free tiers for Appgyver, Make.com, and CraftMyPDF. And what happens is we send data via the API. This hits Make.com, then goes to CraftMyPDF. That PDF is downloaded and then automatically emailed. Now you can make this as simple or complex as you need. You can add, change the data as you see fit. Make sure that you're following any and all applicable rules and security guidelines, but I hope that's enough to get you interested to stay tuned through the whole video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get started. Alright, so let's jump straight in. I'm going to move pretty quickly and assume that you have some knowledge of Appgyver. If you don't, check out my website over at codelessfix.com. I have tons of tutorials and pre-built applications you can actually purchase. Or if you're interested in getting an application made by me, you can fill out the form in the application development tab. There's an actual form there. So jumping straight into this app, here's what we have so far. We have a title component, a text component, and they basically just say what it says here. And then we have added a row, just dragging and dropping. And inside that row is an input field, which you can find here. I have one on each side in each cell, and then an input field below. I've named them first name, last name, and skill. In today's video, we're making a certificate generator app. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to generate a certificate for me, from me. But you can make this as advanced as you need it to be. So you can add in more input fields. You don't even have to use craftmypdf.com. The idea is we're sending and receiving data and having some things happen on the back end, and we're getting this as an email to ourselves. So once you have your input fields, you'll need a button, which is how we're going to initiate the action. I'll remove this extra component down here. Now the next step is go to variables and add in variables for each input that you need, and then we're going to have two extras just in case. So in this case I have first name, last name, and skill, and then output failure and output success. So once we've done that, you can click each input field and change the value by selecting this option here, data and variables, app variable, and select the corresponding variable for that input field. And you'll repeat the process for all of your input fields as I've done here. You can also type it out as a formula if you prefer. Now for our button, we will have some logic that we're going to set up right now. Now I have this logic which is a little bit more complex, which I have done in previous videos. So if you want to see how to hide this component, this button, while the events are processing, you can click the link in the description. I have a more detailed video making this PDF maker. But in this case, I'm actually going to be deleting all of this because it's not really needed for this particular application. So the idea is we're going to make this very, very simple. We're going to set it up and just on the button press, we're going to do this data request. Now if you need to find it, you can go to Marketplace and type in HTTP and click it and install it, but we already have ours. So we are all set. Now, next up, we are going to go over to Make.com, go ahead and create your free account, and then when you log in, you can go to this scenarios page here. Now, when you're in this page, you can basically start off with Open Scenario Builder. And when you do this, it's going to take you into, honestly, a pretty simple page. So I'm going to show you what the flow is going to look like for this application. It's not incredibly difficult, but the idea is we need to start off with essentially a trigger, which is saying, hey, when this happens, do this. And the general idea for this is it's what's starting this process. So it'll essentially be running in the background. So we're going to start off with something called a webhook. So we'll click the plus, and you have tons of applications. In our case, we're going to start off with a webhook. And then you can choose which one works best for you. So you'll see we have when mailhook receives data, webhook receives data, or create a response to the webhook. We're going to choose the second one and say, hey, when we get data. Now you'll see we have the option to choose a hook here, and we're going to choose my gateway-webhook. And when we do this, it's going to give us this unique URL, which you are going to want to keep safe because this is where any user can send data. Now, when we do this, all we need to do is copy this to clipboard, and then we're going to go back to our PDF Maker application. Now we're going to go to this button we've already selected and go to our data HTTP request. And in this case, we need to paste in our URL here that we just copied. Make sure your HTTP request is post. You do not need any headers. And then we have our request body here. Now, one thing to note for this is the request body from a previous video. Ours does not need to be anywhere near this complex. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to delete all of this and get our request body from craftmypdf.com. We need to make sure we're mapping everything appropriately. So what we're going to do is you need to go create your craftmypdf.com account, and then you're going to go to no PDF template, and then you'll name your template here. So you can name it 1, 2, 3 or whatever you need to. And then look through the different templates that they have and see what option works best for you. I prefer the templates instead of starting from scratch. It just makes it a little easier. I already have a sample certificate I'm going to go to in a second, but I want to walk you through the process. So we'll choose certificate 1, and then we're going to click create. Now you'll see we have this updated here, and we can click edit. And when it loads, we now have our certificate. So once you've gotten this far, you should have a page that looks like this, but obviously relevant to the certificate or whatever template you used. And if you go to the data tab, you'll see that we have data that's already been populated. In this case, we have name, Willie Smith, course name, leadership, and motivation. And in the designer tab, you'll see we have all of this. So if you're confused about how this works, all you really need to know is each of these boxes is like a text box. So what we're doing here is we are setting this up by having double brackets, data dot name, and double brackets. We're saying fill this with whatever data we get. So to make it or help it make some more sense, you'll see we have data dot name, data dot text1. If we go to the data tab, we have name, text1. We also have course name, text2, director, manager. And you'll see down here, we have course name, text2, data.manager, data.director. So the idea is you put data dot, and whatever follows that period is going to be the field with that value. Now, the actual value is what's going to be sent in quotes over here. So to help tie all of this together, name is Willie Smith, course name is leadership and motivation. Over here, we see name, course name. If we click preview, it uses our sample data, and you'll see it would show up as Willie Smith, leadership and motivation if we sent this via an API. So now that we have that basic understanding of CraftMyPDF, I'm going to show you the template that I'm using, which is much simpler. So we're going to edit this one in the editor, and I'll show you what I am working with here. So we have the signature down here, and what I like about this is you can choose your formatting. So we just have the text Tyler Talks. I'm not using data dot because I'm not sending this data. I just want this to always be the signature because that's the name of the channel. And then we're going to scroll down and you can adjust all the settings here. And basically the text will just change based on the info you send. You could put another signature here, and you'll see I have in double brackets, double curl brackets, data.skill1, data.firstname, data.last name. That should sound familiar. It's exactly what was in the application that I was writing. So we're going to change this to data.skill. And then we're going to go to data, and you'll see we have to set this up. So this is why I recommend starting from a template and not starting from scratch. In this case, you'll see we have double brackets, and then we have double quotes surrounding each of our data variables, a semicolon, and then the double quotes and the actual value. So in this case, we can actually copy this, and when you're making changes, don't forget in CraftMyPDF to save. Same with make.com. So we're going to go back to our app and paste this in, and then we have one small change to make. The reason I type out the values in craftmypdf.com is to make this step quicker. Instead of having double quotes, I just delete the quote and it knows to assign the value to that app variable. So now when I submit this HTTP request, it's going to say the first name is this, last name is this, skill is this, and that's in single curl brackets. So we will go ahead just to clean it up a bit and delete any unnecessary spaces. If you have really big requests, sometimes it's better to work in Word or Notepad or Notepad++, just so you don't have any issues kind of with this editor getting a little crammed. So we're going to click Save here, and you'll see we're sending to our URL and we're sending this data. So now we're going to go over and launch. So in Appgyver, you can click Launch, Open App Preview Portal, and click your app and basically see it in real time. Now we're going to go over to our integration once more. I know I'm bouncing back and forth between screens a lot, but it's to help keep this moving as quickly as possible. So we have our webhook here, which is the URL, and you see we have copy address to clipboard, which we've done. So now we're going to click redetermine the structure. So the idea is this is now saying, hey, we're listening for data. What does your data look like? So we'll type in some sample data here, and we'll click Create. Now when you go over here, you should see this will eventually say successfully determined, meaning it received the data and it understands the structure. So now we can click OK. So now we're going to add another module. So basically we've set up Appgyver to send data, but now we have to do the next quote-unquote thing. So we're going to add another module, and we're going to add in CraftMyPDF. And then we're going to create a PDF. So in this case, the goal here is we want to connect our sample account. And what we're going to be doing is we are going to be using our only template that is available. So we'll select this template, and then you'll see that it will pull in the latest version, schema of data, and right here we have first name, last name, skill, file name, basically all of the settings that come from CraftMyPDF. Now this expiration is important, especially when it comes to data retention. Now, because we're using a webhook, when we click in the first name field, you should see these values here, but yours may have more or less. These are the values that are coming from Appgyver. When we did our sample HTTP request, these values are what were contained here. So first name, last name, skill. Those are the values or the fields that we're mapping. So we're saying in the first name field in CraftMyPDF, because it's pulling in that data, we're going to put the first name from Appgyver. In the last name field, we'll put last name, and you guessed it, skill, we're putting skill. The idea is we're basically mapping it. We're saying Appgyver is going to send these names, these things. CraftMyPDF is expecting these things, put them where they're supposed to go. So we have this set, and we'll click OK. So we have now set up our webhook to communicate with craftmypdf.com. And next up, what we are going to do is we're going to add in an HTTP module. The reason I'm doing this is because I've been unable to get basically make.com to send the output as a file. It's been sending it as a URL. So we're going to use this to download a file. So when you type in HTTP, you'll see there's a get a file download option. So we're going to download a file from a given URL. Now in the URL here, when we click this, it knows by default craftmypdf.com has a file URL. So we're just going to click OK. But this is the output when we send data to craftmypdf.com. So now we have this module here. We are then going to finish this up by setting up an email. So the reason I really like make.com is they have this email option here, and you can put, as you're scrolling through, send an email. Now in this page, I don't have an account set up already. It doesn't like Gmail, Hotmail, and those other free hosted accounts. So what you're going to need to do is you're probably going to need to either go through their help articles, but I'm going to show you the basic idea of the setup for my work email. So the idea is when you click here, you'll choose your connection type, and this would be for your Gmail account if I'm not mistaken, Microsoft, or others. So if you have access to your SMTP information, which you should just be able to Google or look up from your provider, you'll name the connection. So we'll put test, and then email provider, and in this case, we're just going to put other, but you would then fill out this information. So in this case, for example, you would put whatever the email address is, your first name or your full name, the SMTP server. So an example would be, if you were to use something like Hotmail, you could type in Hotmail SMTP server. And then you can get the credentials here. So you have your email, you have the server, you have the port. So you'll need to find those details, but for your specific email provider. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to fill these out, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so I have gone through and set up the email account just by typing in those credentials. Make sure that you check your security settings and ensure that this is something that isn't going to cause any issues for you, your company, data privacy, etc. So, do you want to save the message after sending? It's entirely up to you. And then the recipient, I have set up a dummy email address to use, but this part is important. If you wanted to, you could pull in the email from your Appgyver application. So if you want users to email content to themselves or to other people, you need to be careful with this because it is sending on behalf of the email that you just added. So I'm going to use basically just a dummy email address. The subject is just going to say, hey, it worked. Content type doesn't really matter. The content, you could just type in some letters. The attachment is what matters. And here you'll see we automatically have it filled with HTTP get a file. So now we're going to click OK. So at this point, as we zoom out just a tad, you'll see that we have our webhook, going to craft my PDF, going to HTTP, going to email. So if you want to test this, you can click run once, and you'll see we're basically waiting on response data. So we're going to click create, and then what I really like is you can basically watch it happen. So the idea here is you're waiting to see if your webhook gets the data, which it did. Then you'll watch craft my PDF is run, HTTP is run. Now we're waiting on the email. In this case, I have it going to this email address here. So let's put these side by side. And you'll see we have it here. So we have Tyler Talks, and then we have our attachment. So we will show you here, these are a couple of options. I figure some people may be using Titan Mail, so I wanted to display those options for you. Again, you can use Yahoo, I pulled that up a minute ago, Hotmail, etc. But the idea here is we just want to make sure that this works. So this is what the PDF is going to look like on the left-hand side. And when I click here, you'll see we have the signature, other signature, and then we just want to make sure that the content matches. So you'll see everything matches up here. This is the name of the certification, which is down here. You can update a different picture if you want, change the theme, but the idea is start to finish, everything is working. So the final thing to do at this point is basically to set this to what we would call a live status. So we can save it here, and then you can scroll through and review your different settings. But if you go to your scenarios, you can click this little switch here. And then if you're ever bored, you can just load the scenario and watch as data comes through. It's kind of cool to see. But the idea is if I close make.com and craft my PDF, and I'm only working with this PDF maker, we're going to put in some new information. So let's fill out and act like we're filling this out for a person. Skill. We're going to put making videos. So now we'll click create. And right now, the data is going to the webhook, and then it's going to craft my PDF, downloading the file, and basically we're just waiting for the file to appear in our inbox, and you'll see here it is. So you'll see how quick that was. Let's check the output. Making videos, Tyler talks, everything looks good. You can download the file, you can open the file, everything looks great. So as you can see, this is a very, very simple but powerful tool. So I'm going to expand this, but the general principle is the same. I think APIs are one of the most useful things you can use because that'll get your data over to make.com, where you can then start kind of messing around with things just a bit. You don't have to use Craft My PDF, you can use other platforms as well, but this is an example of a multi-step application that uses workflow automation. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.